Kereakos Zuras is a former advisor to George W.Bush, a business expert, and he joins us in Washington, D.C. All right. Is the Cain train, Kereakos, coming to a screeching halt over allegations that he sexually harassed some women? And I note parenthetically that our producer just sent us an email from Washington saying that the attorney representing one of the women is making a formal request now of the Restaurant Association, for which Herman Cain worked back in the 90s, to release this woman from her non-disclosure clause in the contract that was incidental to her departure. What's happening to the Cain train?
I don't think this is going to derail his campaign. I think this is just another attack that's going to come of more to follow, as a matter of fact. Look, he's leading the GOP. He's the front runner right now. So, you know, the Democrats are going to do whatever they can to knock him down. Now, first of all, we don't even know the whole story. And I'm glad that the attorneys reached out to the Restaurant Association, because up until now they'd only contacted the news media and they hadn't done anything else. But the other thing to remember is this person received money for an agreement. Now they want to go back, and my question is, why now?
Yeah. You know, it's a little bit unclear if you listen to Herman Cain which woman he's talking about when, but I mean, he was saying with respect to one of the settlements that well, it was a, you know, kind of an insignificant amount, two to 3 months worth of pay, and the New York Times reporting today, Lynn, that it was a full year's salary, albeit $35,000. It doesn't sound like a chunk of change, but it was the mid-90s after all. How much does that, if this woman gets a full year's pay,
Yes.
and part of it was due to an allegation of sexual harassment against Cain, how much does that hurt Cain?
Well, I think that gives the impression that this is perhaps more serious than he's letting on. I think he made a comment that, well, I made a remark about someone's height. Does a company really give out a full year's severance on an allegation that's silly? That stretches the imagination. Unfortunately, in this case, as we were just hearing, we're not getting the women's side of the story because they're bound by a confidentiality agreement. If they're released from that, we might know more. But it sounds like there's a little more smoke to this fire. And, you know, this situation was just characterized as a Democratic attack. This is not an attack. This is a revelation of facts. We know that there have been these allegations made and that there were settlements made. That's not an attack. Those are facts that the American voters need to know about and consider and, you know, come to draw their own conclusions about.
You know, I guarantee you, Kereakos, that one of these women, if not both of them, are going to end up talking. And they're going to tell a story that is dramatically different than Herman Cain's. You know, I've been doing this 30 years. I guarantee you that's what's going to happen.
I hope not, but if they do come out, I mean, you know, we're all going to get the story. But I will say this, you know, I run businesses in corporate America, and I deal with a lot of employees. I employ a lot of people, and a lot of times these things come up, and sometimes you just settle them because it's not worth not
an entire year's salary.
Well, you'd be surprised. You would be surprised.
Listen,
you'd be surprised what they want to do.
I was a lawyer back in the early 80s, and I used to negotiate all kinds of settlements. And you didn't give somebody a year's salary over it. That's not a nuisance value settlement. It's not even a defense costs settlement.
I would think that they would have gotten a lot more if that. And if it was me and I had a substantial case, I wouldn't have settled for 35. I would have went all the way with it.
I mean, to me, that sounds absurd. Again, a comment about someone's height. No company is going to give out a year's severance for something like that. That's ridiculous. And I think there's a trivialization here of what women actually go through when they make these kinds of allegations. It's not an easy thing to do. There's a grueling process of investigation that accompanies it. Most firms are not just handing out money to shut someone up. They do an internal investigation, and if they conclude there's something substantive on the woman's side, that's when they go and begin to talk about handing out a full year's severance package.
Kereakos, there's another aspect to this, and Charles Krauthammer on Special Report asked Herman Cain, do you think race has anything to do with this? Quote, being a strong black conservative, do you think it has anything to do with the fact that you've been so charged? And if so, do you have any evidence to support that? Herman Cain's response was, I believe the answer is yes, but I don't have any evidence to support it.
I don't think this is race charged at all, Greg.
I don't think it has anything to do with race either. I mean, if it's a white guy or Hispanic guy, the same charge is going to be made. So isn't Herman Cain making matters for himself even worse by perhaps falsely, with no evidence, claiming racism is behind this?
I think it's not good to imply that, because I don't think this is race-based at all. I mean, you've got, Arnold Schwarzenegger, you've got Newt Gingrich, you had,
Anthony Weiner.
Anthony Weiner. I mean, so this isn't a black and white issue. It's simply an issue. The only thing I would say is that we need to get all the facts first before. But this puts Cain in a position where he really looks bad all the way around, because you have somebody who's coming out that wants to speak, but they have an order, to not talk, an agreement not to talk, but they want to talk. So it really makes him look bad, and he really can't say anything until this thing, because now it's becoming an issue again. So until it comes out, it's really not clear what's going on, but it really hurts him.
Well, let's talk about the rest. Let's get off the subject of sex harassment, because that's going to unfold in the days and weeks ahead, and I don't think it's going to get any better for Mr. Cain. But let's talk about his performance, for example, last night on Special Report, in which he was grilled by the panel on a wide variety of issues, both domestic and foreign. The sort of anecdotal evidence we've been getting here at Fox News from viewers and emails and tweets and so on and so forth is, Lynn, that he sort of stumbled, fumbled, and mumbled his way through a lot of it, especially on foreign policy. Well, I tell you what, if you're going to run for President of the United States, shouldn't you have long ago been better prepared?
I think there's something to that. I think a lot of people respect Mr. Cain for his success in business, for coming up from not from any great wealth, and having made the mark he's made in the business world. But yes, it does seem surprising that he wouldn't have spent more time getting tutored on things like foreign policy. We've seen candidates stumble over this before, and it's only going to get worse as things get more intense.
Kereakos, I don't believe it was on Special Report, but I saw a clip about an hour ago of a different interview in which Herman Cain, I think it was PBS, in the last day or so, made the remark during an interview when asked about China. He said that they are attempting to develop a nuclear capability, nuclear weapons. Now, of course, China developed nuclear weapons back in the early 60s and has a considerable arsenal, thousands of nuclear weapons, not to mention a delivery system through ballistic missiles. I don't know how you can make a mistake like that even my oldest daughter in high school realizes.
Here's what happens, Greg. These guys are out on the campaign trail.
Don't tell me he's tired.
No, I'm not telling you he's tired. I'm telling you they're throwing so much stuff at him, and he's not paying attention to the issues that he should be.
I would not say that China is trying to get nuclear weapons.
I agree with you. I think a lot of the stuff that he's doing is not being handled properly, and there's really no excuse for that. And
he just doesn't know foreign policy. I don't think he knows a thing about foreign policy. Do you?
Obviously, he's not that well versed in foreign policy. But let me just say this. Is President Obama versed in foreign policy?
I think President Obama knows that China has nuclear weapons.
Hold on, wait a minute. Here's my take on this. Look, there's a lot of presidential candidates on both sides that don't have any clue about foreign policy. But look, we have a problem here in the United States that's economic. And we're looking at a candidate here who's got business experience. And that is far more important right now than anything else.
I don't think you can separate economics from foreign policy.
But that's what advisors are for. Look,
that we make, for example,
listen, President
have a lot
Obama
to do
is
with
not
our military, our strategic decisions. So I don't think those are separate issues.
Yeah. President Obama is not an expert, but he has experts that advise him, and that's what happens. Look, any president cannot be an expert in every single facet of what he's doing. It's impossible. That's why you have advisors.
We're not
That's why you
asking
have
for expertise here. We're asking for basic fundamental knowledge.
I'm not arguing that Herman Cain needs to get better about that.
Let me throw a comparison in here, Kereakos, and I don't mean to beat up on Herman Cain, but it's an apt comparison that during the presidential debates back in 1976, I remember it like yesterday, Gerald Ford, who was trying to run for what would be essentially his first term in earnest against Jimmy Carter during the debates, was asked about the Eastern Bloc countries, in particular Poland, and he claimed to his everlasting regret that Poland was independent and the Eastern Bloc countries were not at all dominated by the Soviet Union. Of course, that was utterly preposterous. It was embarrassing. He tried to backpedal. That and the Nixon pardon proved to be fatal for him. So is this another Ford-like moment for Herman Cain?
It might be if he continues on with not being prepared to answer questions about foreign policy, but it's still early in the game, Greg, and the news right now has been clouded by sexual.
It's not early in the game. It's November, and the first caucus and primary are early January. We're talking about 9 weeks away, 10 weeks away.
And by the time when it comes down to it, there's going to be a lot of news, a lot of things are going to change. The focus will be taken off him, but put on somebody else.
You know
right
what?
Now,
they're going to be playing that clip over and over and over.
Sure they will.
I saw it for the first time today.
No, you're right. They are going to play it, but I again, what we're talking about today, and a couple weeks from now, we're not going to be talking about. There'll be other things that come out. But at the end of the day, it's
more gaffes.
At this rate, Herman Cain can't afford very many more.
That was too easy. But you know what, Lynn? It's interesting because he had a huge fundraising day yesterday, $250,000 in one day for Herman Cain.
Yeah.
And the latest national poll out has him at 30%, Romney at 23%.
Yeah.
How do you account for that?
Well, that's a really interesting thing. Romney doesn't seem to be generating that kind of passionate enthusiasm that Herman Cain. Herman Cain's got a freshness to him. He's charismatic. He's funny. He, kind of identifies with regular folks.
Right.
Hey, I'm not an expert in everything.
You know what? That only lasts for a little while, in my experience.
Yeah. I think there's a real discomfort with Romney. Is he conservative enough for some voters? Is his association with Wall Street something that maybe Tea Partiers are comfortable with? There are some lingering questions about him.
I wonder, Lynn, if as you get closer, and actually let me put this to Kereakos, as voters get closer to casting a ballot in the primaries and caucuses, they have a tendency to get a little bit more serious and a little bit more focused. And maybe that means, correspondingly, that they'll go for the more focused and serious candidate, and not the guy who's kind of fun to listen to and watch and has a bubbly, effervescent personality, which is Herman Cain. But Romney is the more steady candidate, and I wonder if the dynamic will begin to change in his favor.
It may, but you know what? This is all a marketing campaign. Everything we do is a marketing campaign, and it's going to be who's resonating with the voters at that time. And look, we have this election is going to be one on who's going to take. It's an election of the economy and who can fix it. So it's going to come down to whoever the voters feel is going to be able to better handle it. And it may be Cain, it may be Romney.
He was also asked about Iran last night on Special Report, and how he would handle the situation with Iran, and he seemed to not understand our Aegis defense system, our anti-missile system. And then I began to think about, several weeks ago, he was asked about the Middle East and the Israeli and Palestinian conflict and how to deal with it, and his answer seemed to be, I don't really know, but once I become president, I'll figure it out. Now, I come back to my question I asked you before. You start thinking about running for president years in advance, and he's been thinking about it ever since he lost the Senate race.
Yeah.
Don't you put together a team of foreign policy advisors who present you all kinds of foreign policy positions? You pick them, you memorize them.
Yes.
You continue to work with your advisors so that the moment you're asked a question on, let's say, 20 different foreign policy subjects, you have an answer that is clear, that is concise, it is well thought out, and it represents your beliefs. He clearly hasn't done that, which perhaps invites people to wonder, is this guy going to work hard enough when he's president of the United States?
Yes, and how serious is he really? I would be doing weekend retreats if I were running for president, and getting drilled over and over until I had it down cold. And the fact that he hasn't done that does, suggest a kind of lack of seriousness that I think voters are beginning to question.
So was this, Kereakos, initially at least sort of a vanity effort? And he's done better than he ever thought he would in his wildest dreams. And now it's sort of like, remember the old Robert Redford movie, The Candidate? And he, to his great surprise, he actually gets elected to the U.S. Senate, and he turns to, his chief campaign manager and says, Well, now what do we do?
I agree. They're clearly unprepared, and I do believe that they weren't expecting the surge that he got. But he's he's up there in 30%, and he is resonating with the voters. And again, I'm not discounting that he needs to be better about his foreign policy and know a little bit more. But people are worried about the economy right now, so I think the focus is on that. As we move forward, the shift may go to another topic, but we have an economic crisis here, and that's what people are looking at. And that's the people he's appealing to.
And let me point out one other thing. He was confronted about his 999 plan and the effect on those with fixed incomes, and he doesn't have an answer for that. And my goodness, by now he really should have an answer for that. Kereakos.
I agree. If you're going to put out a plan, you need to know what the effects are, and you need to be able to answer those kinds of questions.
And with the euro crisis unfolding, we do see this is a global economy we're talking about. Simply having some expertise in domestic issues is not enough. I mean, we're all connected at this point. What happens in Europe can affect us gravely here.
Agreed.
So, yeah.
But having some experience is better than having zero experience, I'll tell you that.
Yeah.
Because America's a business. We need to be run like a business.
All right. Kereakos, Zuras, got to say goodbye to you. Thanks so much for being with us from Washington, former advisor President George W. Bush. Good to see you.
My
Come
pleasure.
back.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you very much.